Hi, I'm Parker Field. I'm in the 8th grade, and I'm reading my story, The Five Blades of Ascalar. In the kingdom of men lived five great knights. They were called the Five Blades of Ascalar. Their names were Devar, Ren, Corvus, Commodus, and Opal. These warriors were the high knights at the time. They were the king's best knights and most well known. Their swordplay was unmatched, their spellcasting unrivaled. They were the greatest knights from the kingdom of man, but they have now all either been killed, gone missing, or in one case, cast out. I tell this story to tell of their greatness before it is lost to history. Let me tell you of one of their greatest accomplishments. Are you sure we should do this? Ren said. He and his comrades were on the top of Skyloft Mountain. They were there for a very disturbing reason. You see, one day earlier, Lord Frost of Icefell kidnapped the king's daughter, Aurora, who was being held hostage at the base of the mountain. The only thing was that she wasn't being guarded by just any army or person. She was being guarded by the beast called the Sharkon, a huge lizard-like beast with blue scales and red eyes. It had a very sleek build and was about the size of 3 gigatoads. Now this may seem underwhelming, but that's not all. The Sharkon has the ability to control the element of Earth, making it extremely dangerous. It has the ability to rip rocks and earth right out of the ground, and then use them as a type of armor. This is why Ren was unsure of going along with the plan to kill the Sharkon. Couldn't we just make it chase one of us and move it away from the princess? Asked Ren. Or how about we wait till the beast is asleep and Ren? We've gone over this 1,000 times. If we let it chase one of us and then let it go, it will rampage across Lavora without anything to stop it, said Devar. Devar was a tall and strong-built man. He stood about 6'4" and had huge muscles. He was the leader of the Five Blades and was the most experienced monster hunter. And remember, it's also nocturnal. Right? Sorry, replied Ren meekly. Ren was a smaller man and very skinny. He stood about 5'10" and was very lanky. If you two stopped talking, would have killed the beast already, said Corvus quite loudly. Corvus is a very tall and angry man. He was about 6'2" and well built. He also had a very explosive temper. Relax, Corvus. The beast won't spot us from up here, and Lord Frost won't be back to check on the princess until 2 nights from now, replied Opal. Opal was the only woman in the group, and was also the most laid back. She had a slender build and was about 5'10". She also was normally the one to settle the arguments between the boys. All right, said Commodus. Let us go. Commodus was a quiet man and very thoughtful one, too. He spoke seldom, but on the battlefield was invaluable. He was about 6'2" and had a strong build. The five then charged down the mountain at incredible speed and neither stumbled or tripped once. The Sharkon didn't notice them until they had landed behind it. The Sharkon let out an ear-piercing roar and swung around to face the blades. It then gave a low grumble and the huge rocks burst from the ground and clamped onto the behemoth's scaly body, creating a rock-like armor. Now that's quite impressive, said Opal. She then snapped and a blade of water formed in her hands. Agreed, said Commodus. He clapped his hands, and together in his hand formed a blade made of thorny plants. Ren and Devar and Corvus made similar gestures and made their own blades. Ren's made of shiny metal, Devar's made of air, and Corvus made of lava rock and fire. Have at us, yelled Corvus. The Sharkon seemed to understand because it charged the blades. They all jumped in unison over the beast and stabbed it in the tail. The behemoth roared in pain. Then out of the ground shot small rocks shaped like daggers. The group all dodged out of the way. Corvus then shot a fireball out of his hand at a small opening in the Sharkon's armor. The beast howled, and a piece of rock fell away from the monstrosity's body. Ren and Devar threw their blades at the opening. Their blades sunk deep into the beast's scales, right up to the sword's hilts. The Sharkon let out a deafening cry and sent out a small shockwave through the earth to knock the heroes off their feet. The Sharkon then launched a boulder at Commodus with one slash of his sword. The boulder was cut in half. He then made a pulling motion, and a thorny bush came flying off the side of the mountain, hitting and stabbing the Sharkon's tail. The behemoth let out a deafening roar. Corvus took advantage of the beast's pain and stabbed it through the skull with a thunk. The beast stiffened up for a second and became limp. What a weak beast, yelled Corvus smugly. I wouldn't be saying that if I were you, said a raspy voice from behind. It was the Goblin King Korvac. Korvac was a massive goblin, about 8 foot, who had sickly green skin. His eyes were like huge yellow moons on his face. His nose was large and crooked. Korvac ruled the goblins of Arathia, a very vicious kind of goblins who called hobgoblins. Beside Korvac were 5 hobgoblins and 2 massive trolls. The Sharkon is a great beast and warrior. You were lucky it was guarding something, Korvac said. You wouldn't be so lucky to find it in the wild. What are you doing here, you lowlife, spat Corvus. Lowlife, yelled Korvac. He then started laughing his sickly cackle. If I were a lowlife, I wouldn't be a king. Anyway, the reason I'm here is for your beloved princess. Well, you can't have her, said Opal. She is the king's daughter, and she will only reside with the king unless the king wishes her to leave the land of Tarif, said Devar. Oh, I think not. You see, the king has some things I would like, and his daughter is a great bargaining chip, said Korvac. All right, well, if you'll excuse me, I need to find my bargaining chip. Korvac started to walk forward, but a pillar of fire rose in the way of him. No one touches the princess, said Corvus. Agreed, said Ren. Well, I didn't want to do this, but kill the blades and bring me their heads, yelled Korvac to his minions. The trolls and hobgoblins charged at the blades. Attack, yelled Devar. The 5 charged at Korvac's minions. Opal ran forward and swiftly beheaded a goblin. Corvus snapped, and another goblin was set ablaze. Devar created a small whirlwind and flung another goblin far into the distance. Ren dodged the sword of a goblin, kicked its feet from underneath it, and stabbed it in the heart. Then came the trolls. One swung its club and hit Ren and knocked him off his feet, throwing him into the nearby bushes. The other tried to do the same to Opal, but she was too quick. She then leaped onto the swinging club and cut off the end of it. The troll then gave a tremendous roar and threw the hilt at her, and missed. She then made a swift work of it by stabbing it between the eyes. Corvus set the other troll's club on fire. This burned the troll's hand and set it into a rampage. In its rage, it charged at Corvus. As it came at him, Corvus slid between its legs and sliced its knees. The troll then stumbled and fell. Commodus then swiftly jumped and stabbed it in the head. Well, it seems you are out of minions. What now, O great Korvac? Said Corvus smugly. This, Korvac pulled out of his pocket the color of the sky and tapped it once. Then a huge cage rose from the ground. Inside the cage was Princess Aurora. Korvac then tapped the amulet again, and the princess vanished and reappeared next to Korvac. He then put her in a headlock and put his sword to her throat. What now, heroes? What shall you do? Help me, please, said Aurora, as her voice cracked and tears started to fall from her glistening blue eyes. Lay down your weapon, said Devar. What? Are you crazy? He'll kill us if we become defenseless. No, do what he says, said Ren in a weak voice. He had emerged from the bushes from where he was thrown to by the troll's club. Our only hope is to listen to Korvac's demands. Smart man, said Korvac. The blades then dropped their weapons. As they hit the floor, they evaporated into dust. All right, here's what I want. All I want you to do for me is to tell the king that I have his daughter and I'm willing to trade her for the Orb of Atlas. The Orb of Atlas, said Aurora in a frightening voice, tears still streaming down her eyes. Why do you want that? Questioned Commodus. The only use of it is to call upon the dragon Atlas. What need you of Atlas? Let's say we have a little disagreement and ended with half my army dead, said Korvac menacingly. Then, just at that moment, Opal came from behind Korvac and grabbed the sword out of his hand and pointed it straight at his neck. Let her go, said Opal sternly. She stared straight into Korvac's huge yellow eyes with a cold stare. Clever, Korvac replied. He then released Aurora. Aurora then quickly ran over to where the blades were standing. Well, it seems you win this one, Blades, but next time, Korvac, king of the goblin horde, shall have the last laugh. And with that, he vanished into thin air. At that, Opal went over to where Aurora was standing. You all right, your majesty? Said Opal in a kind voice. Yes, and thank you for rescuing me, the princess replied in a weak voice. Now, how do we get home from here? Said Ren. He walked over, holding his side. What happened to you? Said Corvus, bewildered by Ren's injuries. One of the trolls bashed me in the side with its club, replied Ren. May have broken a rib or two. Well then, said Opal, let's get back to Riff as quick as possible. The six then started walking towards the huge plains known as the Plains of Tirith. But to get back to Tirith, they have to walk through the dark forest, a place of dark beings and monsters. When the group entered the forest, it seemed that all the light in the world was sucked out of the forest and replaced with a dark green glow that came from the fireflies and the bioluminescent mushrooms. As they walked through, they started to hear shrieks and roars. At night, Devar would keep watch. As he watched, he would see huge green eyes that stared back at him from the darkness. Yet he would never see the creatures the eyes belonged to. The next morning, they reached a dark black river that gave off a purple mist, and the shores of the river were stained black. What is wrong with this river? Asked Aurora. As she said this, the river seemed to glow a faint green. This is the river Darawar, said Ren. The river was cursed when the Lich Scalacaster used it to make the Dracon virus. This is no ordinary river. As Ren talked, a fish jumped out of the water, but didn't look like a normal fish. It had glowing red eyes, pale blue scales, and huge fangs that came up from its lower jaw, giving it a large underbite. How are we to cross? Aurora said in a terrified squeak. We cross like this, said Commodus. He snapped his fingers, and a bridge formed out of vines. Follow me, said Commodus. Commodus would cross the bridge first, then Corvus, followed by Ren, Opal, Aurora, and finally Devar. As soon as they crossed the bridge, the vines released themselves from the side of the riverbank and fell into the river. As they continued to go through the dark forest, it seemed to become lighter. Then the trees started to lessen, and then came out of the forest into the vast plains of Tirith. Yet their path was blocked by a massive owl-like creature that walked on all fours. It had massive wings with claws like hands for its arms. Its legs were large with powerful muscles and large talons for its feet. It was a Shrike. Stand back, yelled Devar. The blades all created their swords. The Shrike then turned around and let out a loud screech. It leaped into the air and dove at the Fellowship. The blades dodged out of the way, but Aurora didn't move. She was frozen with fear, staring at the beast, eyes wide with fear. Devar then leaped back to where Aurora was and made pushing motion up. This created updraft that pushed the creature up into the sky and made the beast pull out of its dive. The Shrike then swooped around and landed onto a few feet from the group. It then charged Corvus and Ren. Ren took his blade and threw it at the behemoth's eyes. The Shrike caught it in its mouth and snapped it in half. Corvus then put up a wall of fire with a wave of his hand, but the Shrike flew through it without a single burn. Both Corvus and Ren started to run, but Ren stopped and keeled over from the pain of his wound. The Shrike then put on a burst of speed and grabbed Ren with its massive talons. It then quickly changed directions and shot into the sky. Ren! Opal shouted. She shot water from her hand, hoping to hit the beast, but all it did was give the monstrosity a bath. The Shrike then gave another ear-piercing shriek and dropped Ren. Ren started flailing about, trying to get himself to face the ground. Down on the ground, Devar reached his hands out and made a pushing motion, and all of a sudden, Ren's falling pace slowed. But the Shrike noticed this and dived straight towards Ren. Ren then turned back to face the Shrike and started creating small daggers from his hands and throwing them at the Shrike. The Shrike didn't seem to notice them and kept diving. Commodus then made a throwing motion. A huge boulder came flying out of the ground and hit the Shrike straight in the chest. This made the Shrike's dive fall and turn into a free fall, which ended with it hitting the ground with a thud. Ren landed safely on the ground and created another sword from thin air. Do you think it's dead? Said Aurora in a timid voice. Maybe, said Devar. That was quite a fall, and the boulder hit it straight in the chest. It may have crushed the beast's ribs and crushed its heart. Devar walked a little closer to inspect what happened to the Shrike. As soon as Devar got close to the behemoth jumped up and slashed at Devar's side, creating a large gash in his side. Devar winced in pain and bent over. The Shrike then reared its head back and was about to sink its beak into Devar's heart, but a metal arrow sunk deep into the beast's skull, up to the feathers. The Shrike then limply fell straight over. The blades then looked over to where the arrow was shot and found King Henry, king of Tarif, in kingdom of man, on a horse with his personal guards, the mystics, beside him. "Aurora," said Henry in a weak voice. "Father!" Aurora cried, tears starting to form in her eyes. She ran over to her father and he got off his horse and they embraced. The king turned to the blades and said, "Thank you, blades of Ascalar, for bringing back my daughter. Your service to the kingdom will not go unrewarded. It's all part of our job, your majesty," said Opal. And that, my friends, is the end of the story. The blades went back to Tarif with the king and his daughter and were rewarded with medals of honor. Aurora thereafter made sure that she was prepared for another kidnapping and learned swordplay and spellcasting from Opal. As for Lord Frost, when he came to the base of Skyloft and found the dead goblins and the Sharkon, the princess's cage empty, he was furious. He suspected that Korvac had stolen the princess and swore revenge. As for Korvac, no one heard from him for a while, until he got his last laugh against the blades. Sincerely, Atlas, the Prophecy Dragon.